Here are the books that I read in August. Baby Teeth. This was about a 7-year-old who has an obsession with her dad and hates her mom, who has her own childhood abuse backstory, and she's very paranoid about the fact that her kid hates her. It's a slow burn that gets really messed up, and I think it's really good, especially since the psychological sort of aspects of it are very real, and it had a hopeful ending where she gets treatment for her issues, so I actually like the non-cliche kind of logical grounded ending. I recommend it. The Children of Red Peak. This was about a group of kids who escaped a cult in their childhood as a mass genocide sort of stage of the cult was happening, and they come back 20 years later because one of them decided to also follow the same route. It's basically a Lovecraftian god type story and another slow burn, but I think it was really good. There were some characters that I didn't like, but they were unintentionally likable, I think, and I recommend it if you're into some just spooky old god mystery. In a Cottage in a Wood. This book was a total waste of time. It was set up as a typical ghost story where a woman down on her luck and in need of money, manages to get this isolated cottage that recently was vacated because the owner committed suicide, and there's this sort of mystery of why she died because she left some evidence of something messed up in the house and there's possibly a ghost. I kind of wanted to just read this because I was like, you know when you're just in the mood for something kind of comfy where it's like spooky but you know kind of what you're getting into. Honestly, the character is unlikable in a way that I don't really think was intentional. The whole story of the previous occupant dying was just its own mystery because the ghost in the house turns out to be the neighbors faking the ghost the whole time so that they can scare off any resident of the cottage and buy the house and sell it for profit. And they don't even do that in the end, even though they get away with it. They kind of just leave the property as it is. But it's really boring and stupid. Lapfona. This is an amazing book. It's a really messed up story of a small village named Lapfona in the medieval ages and this horrible dictator who resides over it as the Lord. And he has this big sprawling manor and hoards all the resources. It has some surreal magic that kind of lurks around the edges of the plot in the world. It's not for people with a weak stomach at all. It is unapologetically brutal, and I read almost the entire thing in one sitting because it was just so good. The Discomfort of Evening. This was your typical Finnish depression simulator. It was a stifling, claustrophobic contemporary fiction, which was fine, but it was more of a drama instead of my usual, actual horror interests. So I guess it was okay, but sometimes I felt more confused than uncomfortable because it was basically just about some siblings coping with their brother dying and then the parents becoming angry and sort of neglectful in their own grief, and it didn't really go anywhere besides that. Which, it's not technically the fault of the book, it's just maybe that I'm not really into that. 10 and 172 Hours on the Moon. They're both by different authors, but I'm including them in the same section because they're both really dumb. They're both about groups of dumb teenagers being really stupid and dying in stupid ways. 10 is your typical slasher where you guess who the killer is in the first half of the book because the mystery is not really a mystery. It's the brother of the girl that the kids all bullied, and then when she died they were like, oh no, what a mystery. The main character is a writer, and I understand writers for me are either really good characters or really bad characters depending on the actual plot, and this writer was not one of the good ones. She was really pretentious and thought she was better than everyone else. The Moon book is about NASA running out of funding, so they send teenagers to the moon for publicity. This is already the dumbest plot I've ever heard, but I had to read it. The secret is that there's a spooky alien up there and everyone dies. At least it was funny. The Troop. This is about a group of boys and their scoutmaster on an island for the weekend, and this sort of bioweapon plague had been being tested by the government, so this test subject escapes and he's infected with it. He ends up at the island, so they kind of isolated while they slowly get infected and try to run from it. This book is really good. Nick Cutter is a really, really good writer. I recommended The Deep a couple months ago when I read that. You should definitely check both of those books out. It's just a sort of plague creepy Lord of the Flies type of thing. It's gross, but it's so good. Gone to See the Riverman. This is more of a novella. It's really short. You can read it in an afternoon, but it is really messed up, like all of the books that I read, I guess. It's like a demonic, ghostly urban legend type of story. That's not a spoiler, by the way. That's just the way the book is. It's about a woman who has a terrible childhood, and has horrible things that she's done in her past, and she's obsessed with a serial killer she befriended, so he sends her to the secret location to repay the Riverman for what he was given as a sort of test of her friendship, and it gets really wild from there. Ring, or Ringu. This is the original novel of the movie Ring. I highly recommend this novel and the Japanese movie Ring. I'm not a huge fan of the American ones. The book and the movie are super atmospheric and eerie, and it's very grim. The characters are bizarre and somehow unrelatable, yet enthralling in the way that only Japanese novels really do for me. I didn't read this book in Japanese, but I am slowly getting to the point where I want to go and read back these type of books when I finally am fluent enough in Japanese. I'm currently just trying to read through Harry Potter because it's more simple and I'm more familiar with that, so it being in another language isn't as hard as it could be for me. Do not read the rest of this series though. They are insane. This dude, you'd think that the plot's just about the spooky girl stuck in the video and it's like a ghost story, right? The second book is about demons being in AIDS. Like AIDS the virus? AIDS is haunted and there's demons in the government. You think I'm making this up? Look at the Goodreads plot description. Don't do it. The Summer of Ubume. No. The Resort. The author Bentley Little makes really, really entertaining books, but they're a bit silly, And yes, oftentimes they're genuinely eerie and disturbing in certain parts, and overall I think that the pacing is pretty good, but there are definitely moments where I laughed at that I wasn't really sure that I was meant to laugh, like I'll throw up. But basically, in general, I do recommend him as an author. They're like a cult classic 2000s Capcom horror game or a 90s horror movie that everyone loves, even though it's really goofy, and it has genuinely good ideas in it. This book is about a haunted resort in the middle of the Nevada desert that was basically built on the grounds of like a demonic cult or something, so weird things happen in it. I recommend it if you just want to have some fun. Bunny. This book is weird and I don't understand. I posted a segment of it to my friends and on Twitter, and it just read this, please. This is what the entire book is. It's about a group of popular girls who are art students at a prestigious yet pretentious college. The new girl joins in their cult and they explode rabbits and make tulpas out of the exploded rabbits to try and create their own boyfriends, but it never works properly, and then they have a fight and the main character sends a magic deer from the magic forest to beat them up. It's a book about unlikable people, and then everyone explodes and dies, and then the deer beats up some women and everyone starts crying. The end. What did I read? Audition. I really like Ryo Murakami. I read In the Miso Soup last time and I recommended it, and this one as well. It's about an old man whose wife died and he becomes sort of unhealthily obsessed with the idea of finding the perfect young replacement wife for him. So he and his movie producer friend set up a fake movie where they can get some auditions from women. So they're basically trying to get a bunch of applicants so that he can go through all of them and choose his perfect wife through them all as if they're applying to be his wife, but they don't know this. So because of his lying and very creepy sort of actions, he ends up attracting an obsessive, violent killer who has very disturbing tendencies, but he made his bed so he must lie in it. The Association. This is another Bentley novel. It's about the Homeowners Association, and it's basically sort of like a satire on the idea of the homeowners associations where they get really bossy and like a bunch of old people try and tell you what to do on your property. This one, they just get more and more surreal and strict as time goes on, locking the gated community residents inside and not letting them out, becoming more non-human as the residents go insane. It's a good horror mystery and gets really interesting, but it also gets really cliche, like when the homeowners association suddenly decides all minorities aren't allowed in the community and they get killed. I guess it's some sort of social statement, but it just felt really kind of stilted and came out of nowhere. Other than that, it's a fun book. I recommend it. The Girl from the Well. Generic ghost story about a dead woman who befriends a living man and then they get rid of a demon. I'm already forgetting what happened because it was really, like, nothing. The Roanoke Girls. This book was okay. I have mixed feelings about it. Going into it, I was kind of hoping that it would be supernatural, but actually, by the end of it, I was happy that it wasn't supernatural. I don't know. It's okay, listen, this is gonna be a spoiler section, and since this is the last book in this section, just skip if you don't want to see the spoilers. It's about a family in a small town who has a history of girls being born into the family, all either running away or dying. The main character's mum is one of those women who ran away from the family when she was a teenager, and she was a really traumatized and neglectful parent to the main character and committed suicide when the main character was 16. So then the main character goes and lives with the family and her cousin who she's never met. Basically, the dark secret is incest. I mean, if you've ever heard of Virginia Andrews, who's not the author of this book, but you know already, don't you? The grandfather is the one who's behind it all. He has been with every single one of the girls in the family, leading to them either running away or dying. So the big reveal is that he slept with his own daughters and his own sisters. One of his daughters was fathered by him and was birthed by his own sister who ran away, went on to give birth to his granddaughters but also his daughters, and the main character's mom had been a subject of such abuse, and that's where the main character came from, and it's like a whole thing. That in and of itself is a good drama book for me, but the problems that I have are that the characters again were unlikable in a way that I don't think was entirely intentional, and with the main character it was clear that she had flaws intentionally. Obviously this book is about very damaged people, but It reminded me a bit of like Tumblr or LiveJournal because she kept going on and on about how she's so broken and she never did anything to fix herself because she can't be fixed, and like she needs to be in a relationship with a guy who's as broken as she is. And it's just one of those things where you can obviously talk about that, but there's a difference between showing it happening and discussing it rather than just, you know, sort of facing the audience and just straight up saying it like this character kept saying over and over again. It was like a broken record. By the end of it, every time she brought up how broken she was, I was just like, yes, we know. I don't care anymore. But yeah, I don't know, just if you want like funny drama, just stick to Virginia Andrews. Virginia Andrews is a crackhead. It's so okay, that's it for the books that I read. I know it seems like a lot of books, but I do read a lot, like every single night. Like I read like an hour at least before I go to sleep. Every single night it is Tara's reading night, and if you interrupt me, there are consequences.